They're some of our most effective pollinators, living in bright wooden huts, producing honey and wax. Busy, beneficial, and closely tied to humanity's needs. But how do bees live in the wild? And why did they disappear from our forests? In the dark forests, the bees were dark too, the original bees. They had a special place where the woodpeckers pecked in early spring. A high pecking rate was good news for the bees, because the bees were looking for a home, usually in a beech tree and usually high up for safety. Wild honeybees are gone from the forests now, but high up in a woodpecker's hole in a beech tree, there are honeycombs. Thousands of honeybees escaped from a beekeeper. They have managed to survive a whole winter in the wild. Expelling wax via glands in their abdomens, they built the combs. Grey woodpeckers love honey and would go in and grab some if they could, but this one doesn't dare. These bees don't like intruders. The queen, with her characteristic elongated abdomen, is surrounded by workers. These bees can show us how their species survived for millions of years in the forests of Central Europe. They always specialized in woodpecker holes in tall trees. And their life was inextricably linked with other animals in the forest. Woodpeckers are their most important neighbors. These forest carpenters build homes not just for themselves, but for other species too. Black woodpeckers build the biggest holes, almost always in a beech tree. Stock doves, with their characteristic call, like to live in abandoned woodpecker holes. This one takes a long-distance view of potential lodgings. And then moves in for a closer look. But the original builders are planning to start a family here. In Germany alone, woodpeckers excavate hundreds of thousands of new holes every year. Most are made by great spotted woodpeckers. They don't mind what kind of tree they use, so you might occasionally hear buzzing emerge from an oak tree too. A great spotted woodpecker hole is really too small for an entire bee colony. But if no bigger hole is available, they're ready to crowd in. A great tit is looking for a nesting site too, but this one's already taken. And in another, the nocturnal bats hanging from the ceiling make it perfectly clear they have no intention of sharing. This nuthatch, on the other hand, has managed to take over an empty woodpecker hole. He closes the entrance with drying mud to make sure that only he can get in. The original excavator isn't exactly pleased. The subsequent fight upsets the neighbors too. Once the struggle for accommodation is over, the next priority is finding food. And in March, the forest doesn't have a lot to offer. So the bees in the slender beech tree send out scouts to find food. Hazel bushes don't produce nectar. They use the wind as a pollinator. But the bees come here anyway. They collect protein-rich pollen without pollinating the bushes. The workers comb the pollen from the catkins, storing it in saddlebags located on their rear legs. When they return, these forager bees brush off the pollen. The workers inside take over and store the supplies. Pollen is the main food for the bee larvae. These adult winter bees are several months old now and will soon die. But the energy-rich pollen they've collected will feed the coming generation of summer bees. Of all of them, only the queen bee lives through a whole year. Each of the breeding cells contains one egg. A tiny, maggot-like bee larva hatches from each egg and starts growing fast. They're only directly fed for a week. Then the workers cap the cell with wax, and the metamorphosis happens. After 12 days, the new generation bites its way into life. Newly hatched bees are covered in fine silver-grey hairs, which they clean and dry thoroughly before starting their work in the hive. Here, an old forager bee signals with a waggle dance exactly where her sisters must fly to find food. This behavior has been passed on through generations of honeybees. But the wild dark bees, the original holders of this knowledge, have disappeared. It's thousands of years since humans brought honeybees out of the forest and domesticated them. Bees became a commodity. They were even traded between countries. Selective crossbreeding and artificial insemination created hybrids, harder working and less aggressive than wild forest bees. The 1970s sealed the fate of the wild honeybee. As the Munich Olympics celebrated a spirit of modernity and prosperity, the dark, wild forager bees were collecting their last nectar. Wild bees were systematically killed, so they couldn't mate with more productive domesticated ones. When the last fully wild colony disappeared in 1975, wild bees were extinct in Germany. But tame bees keep escaping. They take up temporary residence in the forest, in the place of their wild forebears. Springtime. Early flowerers, like white and yellow wood anemones, shoot out of the ground. They spread their leaves and open their blossom. An amazing annual feat. Bees fly to the carpet of blossoms 100,000 times for a single kilo of honey, pollinating the wood anemones in the process. Each plant is both male and female, with stamens and ovaries. Wood anemones don't provide a lot of nectar, but other forest flowers make plenty. The holewort produces a great deal of the sweet syrup. There's just one problem. The nectar lies hidden deep in their hollow blossoms, difficult for the honeybee's short proboscis to reach. With pollen in their pockets and nectar in their stomach, the forager bees return to their hole. In one day, the foragers can gather up to 1 kilo of supplies. They regurgitate a part of their nectar and pass it on to the honeymakers. These worker bees add enzymes and store the liquid in special honey cells. It's nature's way of making perishable nectar imperishable. In a single summer, a strong colony can conserve up to 100 kilos of honey. That takes the nectar of 100 million blossoms. Once the cells are full, the worker bees seal them with a waxen lid. Bees aren't the only ones with a taste for sweet juices. In early spring, when insect larvae are still in short supply, many woodpeckers tap an unusual food source. A great spotted woodpecker rings a lime tree. It's tapping the sap that rises behind the bark, especially rich in sugars, just before the tree produces its leaves. Exposed to the air, the lime tree sap thickens into a syrup. The woodpecker can take his time circling the ring, licking up the energizing liquid. Blue tits are just as fond of the sweet syrup and sneak in to steal their share. A slightly smaller, medium-spotted woodpecker doesn't bother to do his own work, but invites himself to the great spotted's feast. And these birds need plenty of energy just now. It's the mating season. That applies to the great spotteds, as well as to the blue tits. Some of the smallest forest inhabitants turn up too, to get their share of the sugars of the ringed lime tree. When the evenings get warmer, a new member of the forest community arrives. A freshly hatched Tau emperor moth with his feather-like antennae grips the bark as his wings unfold. As a pupa, he lay motionless on the forest floor for a year, waiting for his few hours of life as a mature moth. Now the females are hatching too. They have thin, wispy antennae. Female Tau emperors disguise themselves as dry beech leaves and emit an attractive scent to encourage the males. That explains why the males have such generous antennae. Thanks to these invisible pheromones, males and females find their way to each other and mate. Hours later, the female will lay her eggs and die. High in the slender beech tree, the bees spend the night huddled around their queen. Together they keep the hive warm. Out in the open, the cold would kill them. The winter bees simply wait it out, but the younger summer bees thrust their head and thorax into an empty cell and wind down their metabolism to save energy. This way they can sleep for hours at a time. By morning, the young bees, covered in their silver-grey down, are rested and ready for work. The scent of blossom wafts through the forest. But at this hour, only bumblebees and a few other wild bees are underway. No honeybee is yet to be seen. Bumblebees can raise their body temperature to 38 degrees Celsius, and so can be active in the cool morning hours, as these images from a thermal camera show. The brighter the picture, the higher the temperature. The bumblebees are so warm, they even raise the temperature of the blossoms they visit, like these common lungworts. Other pollinators, like the humblefly, wait until it warms up to at least 10 degrees before they become active. It's the same for the honeybees, the late risers among the pollinators. This apiary at the edge of the forest has 24 colonies, 1 million bees visiting 1 billion blossoms every day. A veritable army of domesticated bees collecting pollen and nectar within a radius of just a few kilometers. The beekeeper has marked every queen with a colored spot to make her easier to find. She repeatedly dips her posterior into an empty breeding cell to lay an egg, more than 1,000 times a day. At 3 weeks, the young summer bees become active guardians, making sure no foreign bees infiltrate the hive. It's amazing how rarely siblings bump into one another. "15 meters up, the great black woodpecker's nest sees new activity. The next generation is here. The parents bring insects to the nest deep inside the tree. Under the eye of a starling, the female woodpecker climbs down to feed her chicks, before clearing out the leftovers. The mini woodpeckers are constantly exercising their long tongues. They'll need them soon to eke insect larvae out of their crannies in the bark. The early blossom has gone, and there's less and less nectar to be found in the woods. But soon, another food source comes on tap. Green-striped fir aphids sit on the trees in their hundreds of thousands, drinking the tree's sap to absorb its proteins. In the process, they take in far more sugar than they can digest, and they excrete the surplus from their rear ends. Each aphid passes one drop every couple of hours. Soon, the tree is covered in sugar water. This is irresistible to the comma butterfly and to the longhorn beetle, which normally concentrates on blossom. The common carder bee licks aphid poo from the pine needles, as do the honeybees. As long as there are enough aphids, the bees will fill their honeycombs with collected and regurgitated louse urine. The result is wild forest honey. The heavily laden foragers return to the hive. They squeeze the honey out of their honey bladder and into the combs. A thunderstorm lowered the temperatures, and the bees are clustering closer together. The inside of the colony is kept at a steady 36 degrees Celsius. On their own, single bees couldn't maintain this temperature, but together they form a real incubator to keep the developing bees warm. Black woodpeckers, on the other hand, don't have a problem with tumbling temperatures. They can find food for their young in any weather. In their nest, the chicks are snug, warm, and dry. The opening of the hole is designed so no water gets in, even if it's flooding down the tree trunk. Forests can store enormous amounts of water that eventually evaporates from the leaves. That creates a perfect microclimate for plants, fungi, and animals. And now the birds are kept busy. Nuthatch parents fly back and forth, bringing food to their young at intervals of just 1 minute. Safe behind their protective mud wall, the chicks wait for the tasty caterpillars. The offspring of the Tau emperor moth are on the move in the canopy of the beech trees. These tiny creatures have huge antlers to scare away hungry birds. There's food for everyone in these mixed forests. The chicks of the great spotted woodpecker never stop demanding more. One chick is always on chirp guard, calling out at the entrance to the nest, urging the parents to stay close and keep delivering food. Unlike black woodpeckers, great spotted woodpeckers bring the catch back to their nest in their beak. They don't carry the food in their crop. Now it's another chick's turn to be on watch. Meanwhile, the black woodpecker's young are big enough to scramble up to their parents to be fed. Something exciting is about to happen where the oaks grow in the forest. The bee colony is getting ready in its cramped hive. There are now 50,000 worker bees in this nest. There's not enough room for them. The colony has grown too big. A generation of bug-eyed drones are being born. Right now, they're helping to keep the colony warm. Later, their job will be to leave on a mating flight and impregnate the queen. Young queens emerge from overlarge queen cells. The workers free them from their wax prison because the old queen will soon be gone. This young queen has successfully made it out. Her body is still very soft. They'll feed her until her chitin exoskeleton has hardened. Now the old queen gathers hundreds of attendants around her. Half the colony swarms out of the hole in the oak, starting the search for a newer, bigger home. They gather on a branch at the edge of the forest as scouts leave to find a suitable new place for the hive. Their instinct leads them deep into the forest. A number of scouts conclude simultaneously that this location is occupied. They can't know that the young black woodpeckers here are about to leave on their maiden flight. But then they discover another uninhabited hole in the thick trunk of an elderly beech tree. They'd be safe from predators here. When more than a dozen scouts report back about the same hole, the swarm sets off. Thousands upon thousands of worker bees follow the scent markers and land on the old beech tree, where their sisters are waiting beside the entrance. It's a luxury condominium in a prime location. The bees are remodeling the whole place from scratch, building honeycombs, laying eggs, collecting nectar, creating a brand new hive. A wax chateau with stunning interior design. bright white eggshells on the forest floor, proof that the stock dove's early mating calls were answered. The forest's black woodpeckers hammer out about 10,000 holes every year. Pigeons and other tenants use them all year round. And yet these homes are still in short supply because today's managed forests often have a shortage of older trees. Every species has its own tricks for evading their enemies in the cycle of eating and being eaten. Tau emperor caterpillars are now as thick as a chubby finger, gnawing at leaves in the canopy of a beech tree. But how can such a big larva become invisible? Woodpeckers have good eyesight. Tau emperor caterpillars disappear with their 2 shades of green, a line mimicking the edge of the leaf down the center of their bodies, and by staying very still. By the end of June, it's time to shelter in the fallen foliage. But how to get to ground level without standing out? On the principle, just close your eyes and jump. Their armored exterior and piles of old leaves protect them from harm. It helps that they all drop at the same time. Caterpillar rain increases the chances of survival for each individual. Each then finds a hiding place beneath a leaf on the forest floor. Here, it transforms into a rigid pupa. And it will stay here, hidden from prying eyes, until next April. If all goes well. Just as with woodpeckers and other forest animals, most of the young do not survive their first year. In July, it starts to get hot. The bees take in water at the hog wallow. They store it in their honey bladders. They can carry half their body weight back to the hive. The swarm has settled in nicely. Thousands of workers have already hatched. The foragers distribute the water around the hive. It evaporates and cools the interior when the temperature threatens to rise above 38 degrees. The queen needs a perfect temperature to produce enough offspring. Hundreds of young bees every day that rest their heads in empty cells before going out to work. But why aren't there more of these bee trees in the forest? Humans were so afraid that the original wild honeybees would interbreed with the peaceful domestic variety that they eliminated them. But then why haven't escaped domestic bees established themselves permanently in their place? It's not because there's too little food. The forager bees from the slender beech have filled their honey bladders with nectar from the lime trees. They give their nectar to the nurse bees. everything is running smoothly. But something is not right. A honey thief has moved in. The death's head hawk moth, one of the biggest and heaviest moths in the world, creates a chemical compound that imitates the scent of bees in order to remain undetected. The hawk moth specializes in stealing honey. Its proboscis is the wrong shape to suck nectar from flowers. But things don't always go its way. This colony is still strong enough to attack the intruder. If they sting the moth repeatedly, its fate is sealed. The uproar in the hive has subsided. The dead moth decays on the floor of the hive. Normally, cleaner bees would now remove the remains. But this doesn't happen, because the colony is too weak. And that is because a mortal enemy is literally sitting on their necks. It's the varroa mite, accidentally introduced from Asia, an armored bloodsucker that can multiply massively. The bees don't seem to be aware of the problem, and so they can't develop a way to free themselves from the parasites. Natural hives have helpful neighbors. Tiny pseudoscorpions, for example, that like eating mites. Though it isn't clear if they can also vanquish bigger, well-armored varroa mites. The invasive mites are vectors of disease. They have weakened this colony so much that it can no longer maintain its temperature. Empty honeycombs speak for themselves. To survive the winter in this tree hollow, the bees need to produce at least 30 kilograms of honey. Now wasps force their way into the hive and steal the last reserves. If there isn't enough honey to go round, the colony is doomed. Again and again, the bees' defensive instincts are aroused. The workers try to kill the intruders, or at least chase them away. But the colony, once so strong, is getting weaker and weaker. Its life is draining away. The miracle of the beehive must give up its place in the tree trunk. But still, this space is full of life. It's not long before new species take over this liberated dwelling. Some just for a short time, others are here to stay. And now an inconspicuous insect makes its entrance. It's a little moth. And it's not alone. An abandoned beehive full of honeycombs. A wax moth could hardly imagine anything better. Wax moth larvae don't eat leaves like other caterpillars. They eat wax. They specialize in abandoned honeybee nests. Soon the combs teem with moth larvae. They break down the wax that no longer serves any purpose and return its ingredients to the food cycle. The combs transform into a honey-scented cocoon, where the caterpillars change, first into pupae and then into flittering moths. It's gone quiet around the hollow in the slender beech tree. Not so at the black woodpecker's treehouse. The parents feed their chicks for the last time at the entrance to the nest. Now things get serious for the young. Their parents tempt them out. Although the fledglings have never used their wings, they can fly from the very first moment. Back in the old, broad beech tree, the colony that recently moved in is flourishing. In their hollow, they've stored 50 kilograms of sweet winter supplies, packed from floor to ceiling, the work of innumerable forager bees. The behavior of these bees is remarkable. They clean each other intensively. If the bees that show this behavior most strongly survive and learn to eradicate mites, they may even have a chance of fighting Varroa, making a permanent comeback here in the wild. Beekeepers too would benefit from bees that survive without chemical treatment. And so would others, like a wingless little fly, the bee louse. It shares bees' homes, sometimes steals honey and reproduces here. But it doesn't harm the bees like the Varroa does. But when beekeepers started using chemicals against Varroa, bee lice disappeared too. With the chemicals taking over, domestic bees are no longer under the pressure of natural selection, and so they have lost their cleaning instinct. It's a vicious circle. In a clearing, a small wild bee encounters a honeybee. The smaller one loses out. The bigger one gets the rich pickings. In nature, might is often right. Blackberry blossom, an abundance of nectar and pollen. The big shoo away the small here too. Mostly. Sometimes honeybees even compete with each other. But in a healthy and diverse habitat, there is enough for wild and for domesticated bees. Just as it was wrong to wipe out the dark wild bees in the forest, so it would be wrong now to badmouth the domesticated bees. After all bees pollinate plants and see to it that the plants bear the fruit that feeds both humans and animals. For the bees in the broad, aged beech, great changes are on the way. From this point on, the colony depends entirely on its stores. The forager bees are no longer needed. A new generation of winter bees has hatched, and they will keep the colony alive and warm until spring. The young workers waste no time in dealing with the old, worn-out summer bees. They pinch them and bite them, throwing them, dead or alive, out of the hive. But nothing goes to waste in nature. Scavengers, like the leatherback ground beetle, won't turn their proboscis up at discoveries like this. Some dead bees still have honey in their honey bladders. Tens of thousands of bees are born and die each year in a beehive, a rich source of nourishment. There comes a time when every tree falls, maybe after centuries, and lies there, branches outstretched like arms. Even when a tree with a woodpecker hole, where so many species have made their home, lies dead on the ground, it still plays a vital role in the natural environment. Any number of tiny creatures take over the fallen tree. The flat-backed millipede slips into a little crevice in the bigger hollow. A safe hideout is valuable for any animal. Insects and their larvae are a much-desired food source. That's why black woodpeckers like coming back here. For the first time, the temperatures in the woodpecker's forest have sunk below zero. The bees in the elderly beech have come together in a winter cluster, keeping the temperature at a constant 20 degrees, warm enough to stay alive, protect the queen, and keep the honey liquid. They can raise the temperature with a rhythmic shaking of their muscles. Now they have barely enough energy left to fly or to sting. And that's his chance. The grey woodpecker instinctively knows that kilos of honey are hidden here, even if he's never encountered bees in a hollow tree in the woods before, because there are so few left. Every child knows how important honeybees are for us humans. But we're only beginning to recognize their role in wider natural cycles. Wherever a grey woodpecker steals honey from an ancient beech tree where bees live together with bee lice and pseudoscorpions, nature is still, or once again, intact. Here in the forest, where bees can be wild.